Hello everyone. Now we are going to talk about the United Kingdom energy transition strategy. The UK is one of the countries supporting the decisions made during the Paris Agreement in 2015 to keep the global warming beyond 2 degrees Celsius. Therefore, through renewable energy, which consequently would lower greenhouse gas emissions, the UK is transforming its energy sector towards a more sustainable energy market, domestically as well as internationally. How the UK's energy sector succeeds its goal, we will discuss here in our presentation. We are going to give first an overview over the UK energy profile. Then we're going to talk about the transition to solar energy, to bioenergy, to wind energy and hydropower. Then we will talk about the challenges to switch on low carbon energy sources and renewable energy investments, and to give an outlook of the energy transition. So the United Kingdom's energy consumption is composed of 4 sectors, namely for the transport, the domestic use, for the industry and services. And as here in my first figure, you can see the consumption of bioenergy and waste is increasing during the time period from 1970 to 2014, while the solid fuel sector that also integrates coal is dramatically decreasing. And today, the energy sector is divided in 5 different sectors, as we can see on this figure. And furthermore, the UK's energy production constitutes 12% of the whole European energy production. And remarkable is that the trend of the decreasing coal sector has already arrived at a minimum of 6% and tends to shrink even more. The UK became an energy net importer in 2004, and 90% of the gas and oil that is used comes from imports. Moreover, the UK is importing coal and other solid fuels, mainly from Russia, the USA, Australia, and Colombia. And furthermore, the kingdom is importing crude oil from Norway, which makes today 57% from the whole UK crude oil imports, while in 2011 it was still at 67. And of course, electricity, which is composed of renewables and nuclear energy, is mostly imported from France and from the Netherlands, whereas the UK itself has still 15 nuclear reactors. Nonetheless, the UK also acts as an exporter of mainly crude oil. The resources are going to destinations such as the Netherlands, to China, Germany, and South Korea. And here on this picture, you can see the Forties oil field, which is the largest oil field in the UK. And here you can see the carbon dioxide and greenhouse emissions. And actually, since 1990, the UK has decreased its carbon dioxide emissions to 41%. And they have the agenda that by 2050, they want to decrease the overall greenhouse gases by 80%.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to present you solar and bioenergy rise in the United Kingdom. So the UK has been generating increasing amounts of clean energy from renewable sources ever since the late 80s. With gas and oil supplies from the North and Irish Seas gradually dwindling and driving wholesale energy prices upwards, Britain needs to commit to green energy to ensure reasonable prices, energy independence, and to meet fast approaching emission targets. In terms of the solar energy, we can say that it's undoubtedly one of the most popular forms of renewable energy worldwide. Solar panels are extremely popular with the homeowners living in many different types of homes, both permanent and mobile. According to the bioenergy, biogas itself cannot be directly used to replace the natural gas that flows throughout the UK gas networks. However, a little extra processing increases methane content, removes impurities, adds an undefinable odor for safety, and with that, biogas can be made into green gas. And biomethane is another name for green gas. It's essentially indistinguishable from natural gas, except for its origin. Moving on to the next slide, as you can see here, it's a graph and with a pretty steep increasing manner for renewable electricity generation. The UK generating capacity for green gas has grown rapidly these past 5 years. The primary reason is that green gas can be made out of many different kinds of biomass and organic waste slurries, and the technology involved here is scalable and fairly cost effective. Biomass can be sourced from any living substance as well as from materials such as biodegradable waste, food waste, and animal manure. Biomass can be burned in thermal power and heat generation. The UK government has committed to reducing UK greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050. And to achieve these, elements of UK energy system must deliver negative emissions, that is to say, they must remove from the atmosphere more carbon than they emit. Biomass production and consumption, especially when combined with carbon capture and storage, offer a credible route for the UK to deliver negative emissions. So, low-cost roads to 80% reductions in green gas emissions foresee around 130 per year of energy being delivered from bioenergy sources. And this equates to approximately 10% of total energy in the UK demand for the year 2050. Here, as you can see, bioenergy is the next most significant component of renewable energy generation at 11.3% for year 2019. Thank you very much for your attention.
So now I will be talking about wind and hydropower energy. Let's start with the first one. About 12.7 million households were able to power their homes supplied from wind farms in 2018. Moreover, as of now, the British power produce twice as much energy from wind farms as from coal. Receiving about 40% of Europe's wind, the United Kingdom has only one turbine per 100 square kilometers, compared to Germany, which has 7, and Denmark reportedly having 14 turbines per 100 square kilometers. So let's understand how the wind turbines look like. The wind turbines are tall, about 150 meters, and about more than 8,000 wind turbines are located across the United Kingdom, which accumulates about 90 megawatts of electricity, covering 50% of all electricity produced in the United Kingdom. Additionally, the highest wind turbine is located off the coast of Liverpool City, about 195 meters tall. With only one rotation, this particular turbine could generate electricity for households enough for 29 hours. It's worth mentioning that plant investments in wind energy represent about 17.5 billion pounds, and decreasing CO2 emissions by 26 million tons per year. Nevertheless, as many advantages the wind energy contains, a couple of drawbacks such as inconsistency and unreliability present. There might be days when the wind will not blow at all or less frequent, not sufficient to power a decent number of households. So also this type of energy requires high capitals to be investment. For instance, 1.8 billion pounds were invested into the London area wind farm, which has 175 wind turbines. Moving to the next slide, hydropower. Hydropower accounts for only 1.8% of total electricity produced and represent 18% in the renewable sector across the United Kingdom. A few different approaches used in hydroelectric plants to generate electricity. The first type is river-based, basically built in rivers and producing the electricity by water that flows through the turbines, causing them to spin and generate a kinetic power. Advantages: low initial investments required to build and operate, less CO2 emissions. Disadvantages: requires huge control, rising river level, floods, and inability to store energy. Thus, the energy needs to be consumed and used immediately. Second type, tidal energy. The tides flow through turbines that are located close to the coast under the water, which spin the blades and generate electricity. Advantages: reliable, occurs each day a couple of times, sustainable. Disadvantages: not highly developed and less effective compared to the types mentioned earlier. Considering overall benefits that hydropower provides, such as reliability, plants could generate energy 24 hours per day. 90% of kinetic energy is converted to electricity, the highest index among all other renewables. Low cost to generate electricity could last 50-100 years without any capital reinvestments. Ability to react to increased demand immediately. Disadvantages: CO2 emissions while operating the reservoirs and building the plants itself. Create negative outcomes to locals and wildlife. And last but not least is nature limitations of the landscape across the United Kingdom. Therefore, lack of suitable places to construct hydroelectric plants due to high need in flooded areas. Consequently, bearing in mind these drawbacks, it becomes clear why hydropower energy wasn't growing rapidly during previous years comparing to the other types of renewables. Thank you.
So, the UK made its way in the transition to a low-carbon economy at international and national levels. That is, the UK is committed to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by at least 80% by 2050, according to the Climate Change Act of 2008. Due to the established goal of the government, such areas as electricity generation and use are already transitioning to lower carbon alternatives. The issue is that the use of low carbon alternatives such as wind, solar, and biomass energy have also led to significant growth in those energy sources. And thus, 1/3 of electricity in the UK, as you see, is generated by these renewables. Furthermore, since the cost of offshore wind has decreased, the wind turbines have increased their capacity. However, the greenhouse gas emissions from power generation constitute just 1/3 of the 1990 emissions level. As for transport emissions are 3% lower than they used to be in 1990. And again, it's not a high indicator. These reductions happen due to the improvement in the efficiency of the combustion engine, when consumption of fuel per kilometer decreased by roughly 1/3. Nevertheless, a large transition regarding the fuel types has not occurred. Thereby, renewable energy used in transport, as you see, makes up just 5%, which comes from biofuels. Therefore, in order to achieve zero-emission sector of transport, the government should commit itself to the provision of the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles and the increase in the capacity of power networks. In addition, when it comes to heating, a large part of residential heating operates with the help of the combustion of natural gas, as it used to do in 1990. Although the government reduced the demand for natural gas by the regulation about energy efficiency measures, still renewables in the heat sector make up just 8%, which is again not a high indicator. These regulations are about support for insulation and installation of condensing boilers which are strongly efficient. Consequently, achieving reductions in the future require essential change in the way heating works. However, still many consumers will continue to demand heating systems based on gaseous fuels. Therefore, combustion of hydrogen can be the solution for low carbon energy usage at lower cost than other alternative sources of energy. Yet, achieving net zero emission will require further changes, such as additional capital expenditure of 1 to 2% of GDP in order to support a new carbon-free economy. That is, it might also result in increase in sector investment from around
20 to 25 billion UK pounds to 40-50 billion UK pounds. Furthermore, still investment in oil and gas sector, as you see, will be needed in order to support the overall economy of the UK. The reason is that without this investment, the production of the UK might suffer and even be terminated. Also, the fast transition to the new economy might happen at the expense of the individual consumers, households, and businesses. Thereby, changing their demands presents a great challenge to the policymakers of the UK.
Now, I would like to talk about renewable energy finance in the United Kingdom. To start with, decarbonization requires significant investment in renewables. So, according to this Renewable Energy Country Attractiveness Index, United Kingdom is the sixth most favorable country for the investment in green energy, such as onshore and offshore wind farms, biomass power stations, or hydropower systems. At that moment, renewables produce more than 20% of the United Kingdom's electricity, and this now expects to increase in order to reach by 2015 the goal of the United Kingdom of net zero nationwide. It was to mention that the Great Britain became the first major economy that will require to bring all greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2015. So basically in the United Kingdom, there are several schemes that provide financial support for renewable energy. These schemes encourage technological development and wider adoption of renewables, which in turn leads to economies of scale and lower costs. So the United Kingdom adopted the following types of investment. The first one is the renewable obligation, the second is the feed-in tariff, and the third one is the contract for difference, or the CPT. So the main focus of our paper was concentrated on the CPT. So CPT is a new scheme to support renewables and other low carbon technologies. This support scheme is currently being developed through electricity market reform. So how the CPT works? So first of all, CPT is an agreement concluded between the electricity generator and the government enterprise. And CPT payments are a two-way payment process. So when for example, the reference price is less than the strike price, LCCC, is basically a government-owned company, makes a different payment to the CPT generator. But when the reference price is greater than the strike price, the CPT generator pays LCCC. So basically, at that moment, have been four allocation rounds, agreements for CPT contracts. And all of them was mainly concentrated on offshore wind energy market. All four leasing rounds show how the market for offshore wind energy developed since 2000. So it is worth to mention that the United Kingdom is the world leader in offshore wind, and it is the largest operating offshore wind, has the widest capacity in the world. So basically now the fourth round is focused on the further development of core energy technology in offshore wind.
Okay, hello. I will continue with the future outlook of the energy transition in the UK. It's better to start from defining the situation on UK energy arena. The main player here is OG UK, Oil and Gas UK. OG UK plays a big role in developing the process of energy transition, and they are doing that from 2018. Every year they improve their plans by working with government very closely, and they do more and more significant steps towards better energetic future of UK. Let's continue with greenhouse gases emissions. Their amount decreased for approximately 40%. It's very difficult to decrease the amount of greenhouse gases because coal, oil, and gas which produce it are very valuable for UK industry development. But OGUK are developing special recycle mechanism which capture greenhouse gases and decarbonize it. OGUK has another plan to decrease the amount of greenhouse gases. They want to improve agriculture, reduce meaningless elimination of green zones, and vice versa, try to increase their area. They plan to decrease currently 50 megatons of CO2 emissions by 40 megatons in a short period of 5-10 years. OGUK cooperates with UK government to implement their main plan for net zero economy. Their emissions and usage of carbon fuel is set to the minimum level. It consists of 4 main steps. Let's start with progressing. UK government understands that it's impossible to fully reject carbon fuels because it needs a developed alternative energy system and also strong economy. That is why they will continue to extract oil and gas. And during this period, they will transform the economy, create new job places, improve alternative energy sources. And after that, they plan to meet net zero economy goals. Second step is developing. OGUK says that in 2050, usage of oil and gas will be significantly decreased. Gas will be used in decarbonized form, while oil will be used only in small energetic purposes. Um, they plan to lead as the cleanest country in the world. So they develop special protocols for businesses in order to motivate them to decrease CO2 emissions by putting tariffs for about 28 euros per ton of CO2 emissions. Third step is supporting. They understood that not only production takes big portion of emissions, but also producing electricity and fueling is very costly and dangerous. That's why government wants to support the improvement of low carbon electricity production, heating systems, developing and spreading the alternative fuels and electric cars. And the main technology called CCUS, which capture and process carbon gases, and now it's very successful. And the fourth step is expanding. They want to expand low carbon businesses and transfer the skills acquired from this sector to the offshore energy sector. Okay, that's all. Thank you for your attention.